I don't think most people understand how hard it is to get safe from cult torture, how long it can take, especially if we don't have supports around us or enough supports. I started remembering incest when I was 13, and I disclosed at school by writing. It got the police and CAS involved. CAS is like Child Protective Services in the US. And I was so terrified because my abusers told me they would kill me if I talked, and they killed kids in front of me, and I knew they would and could, and I was living with my abusers that I couldn't tell them. And also, so much of me was suppressing the memories. I couldn't tell them who my abusers that I was living with were or what they were really doing. And the social worker didn't even take good time with me and was not trauma informed, definitely not cult trauma aware. And she met me in her car on the street where my parents lived, a house or two away. That was not safe. And she spent very little time with me. The detective was actually good with me and spent a few years like befriending me and um, trying to offer me support because she'd also been through child sexual abuse. But I ran away from home to get safe before she could help me. I had a really good therapist. The first therapist was um, basically forced on my parents in terms of because I had disclosed. The Metropolitan Toronto Special Committee on Child Abuse was like really suggesting to my parents that they get me a therapist. And they were in the non-offending parents group while I went to a support group. Of course, I could barely talk. I could barely speak. I could barely speak above a whisper. I was terrified. So they got me my first therapist that I didn't choose that was cult involved. So of course she was reinforcing all the cult torture messages and she was reporting back everything to my parents. When I started to remember more and more, I was able to get my own therapist who knew about cult torture and I ran away from home. My parents and other cult abusers found me and would bring me back every night for cult torture. I did not have safety. I was remembering and I was having constant flashbacks and I was in crisis. And every single night, they were torturing me. They were picking me up and torturing me, and then would bring me back. So they were increasing the torture. They were increasing the mind control messages. I did not have safety. And I had to, over time, to get safe, work so hard on inner cooperation with everyone inside with the dissociative identity, inner cooperation, inner communication, hear from everyone inside who they actually remembered. And that took so long because we were still being tortured by them and we did not have safety. It took me so long and so many times of running away to get safe, to get finally completely safe. It took me most of my life. If I had had more support, if I had had therapists who understood more about the cult torture, even though I've had two good therapists who did understand a lot, they might have known that, say, for my first partner, the cult picked her, they chose her in the cult torture, and then set her up as someone who was rescuing me in the cult torture, so that when I met her in everyday time, because of the dissociation and the walls in between, I felt safe with her and I felt drawn to her, even though for the first few seconds I did not trust her. Cult can do that. Set it up so that there are people who we think might be safe that aren't. But if we trust our instant intuition, we are often safer. But when we're still being tortured and having mind control used against us, even if it's only at night and it's not just the day and night, it's so hard to get safe, to figure out who is actually safe, to fight against all the mind control messages and the torture and the trauma. It took me most of my life. I wish that there were so much more like trauma informed and especially cult torture informed professionals and the general public who could help survivors and could help them get safe. But it is hard sometimes to even have people who can hear us and believe us and support us. So I'm really grateful for each of you who hear and believe and support me and other cult survivors, cult torture survivors, and who then are a little more aware in the world for other survivors.